Today, we're going to be talking about my top 10 launch coasters.
Let's talk about amusement parks, like rides in the dark. Rides right here and rides all over, but mostly coasters. We'll talk about all kind of things, but mostly coasters.
In 1977, King Cobra opened up at King's Dominion as the world's first launch roller coaster. Since then, launch coasters have become increasingly more popular, finding new and innovative ways to propel thrill seekers down the track. Having personally been on 37 launch coasters, I can definitely see why some parks and manufacturers have made it their primary mode of coaster acceleration. Now, for this top 10 list, I wanted to equally weigh the overall quality of the roller coaster with the quality of the launches themselves, with a slight bias to the overall coaster experience. But enough blabbering, let's get into the list. At number 10, we have the two Six Flags Mr. Freeze coasters. At Six Flags Over Texas, this coaster currently launches riders forwards, while Mr. Freeze at Six Flags St. Louis launches riders backwards. And I've personally only done the backwards launch. These coasters use a slightly dated LIM magnetic launch, taking riders from 0 to 70 miles per hour in 3.8 seconds. Which is really impressive considering the age of these rides, with both of them opening up all the way back in 1998. This is a pretty forceful launch, and I'm sure it's still really great forwards, but feeling this kind of launch backwards is incredible. Lurching forward in your seat is definitely different from a conventional launch, and you get some great visuals as you head out of the dark tunnel into the outside world. There is, however, not a whole lot to the rest of the ride, which is why this isn't higher up on the list, but what it does have is good, with a forceful inverted top hat, a great weightless vertical spike, and a return trip to the station in the opposite direction from which you started. Next, we'll head over to the resort famous for their launch coasters. At number 9, we have Revenge of the Mummy at Universal Studios Florida. And I know this ride isn't new by any means, but I will be sharing spoilers, so if you don't want this ride ruined for you, go ahead and skip to the next coaster. The Mummy is so much more than just a roller coaster. It has functioning animatronics and a full pre-launch show scene. You have multiple special effects and other cool visuals, so it is so hard to compare it to all of these other coasters. But on top of the ride's great theming, it also delivers a great coaster experience. The first launch itself is decently forceful despite not being very long or fast. I mean, it only has a top speed of 44 miles per hour, but the launch is inclined and into the pitch blackness, and it is followed directly by a surprising ejector airtime hill. The other two LIM launches are not notable as launches, but one does send you down a small backwards drop, and the other comes after an amazing fake ride ending. In addition to all of that, the rest of the ride has fun twists, turns, and floater airtime hills in the dark, and, of course, Brendan Fraser. This ride is such a complete package, and the launches are just the icing on top of the cake. Now moving on to the theme park next door. At number 8, we have the Incredible Hulk at Islands of Adventure. This is another coaster featuring an inclined launch, this time using drive tires to propel you. The anticipation leading up to the launch is great, as you slowly make your way up a themed tunnel that includes visual effects, onboard audio, and a surprise acceleration from 0 to 40 in 2 seconds. At the end of the launch is one of the snappiest inversions ever, a high-speed 0G roll. And everyone knows that the rest of Hulk's ride is an intensity powerhouse with 7 inversions and fast pacing all the way through. This coaster is definitely a must-do for all the intensity lovers out there. At number 7, we have a fairly unique launch coaster, Thunderbird at Holiday World. This is a wing coaster, meaning that riders are seated on the outside of the track with nothing above or below them, and it is the only launched wing coaster in the United States. And this is already a model of coaster that I love, so adding a launch to it just makes me love it even more. Thunderbird's acceleration is fairly forceful, going from 0 to 60 miles per hour in 3.5 seconds. Adding to the excitement of this launch, you also have thunder and lightning, audio and visual effects. The rest of this ride is also super fun, with great pacing that definitely feels significantly faster than other wing coasters, great inversions, with the best being the slow motion inline twist at the end, and you even have a surprise airtime moment. And of course, like any good wing coaster, there's also a couple near misses. All of this happens in a nice, semi-isolated setting in the trees, making Thunderbird another top-tier coaster at Holiday World. Moving on to number 6, we have what are probably the weakest launches on this list, but the coaster is so exceptional that it more than makes up for it. Copperhead Strike at Carowinds. This ride does have 2 launches though, so it sure does get points there, even if the launches aren't that forceful. The first launch has some theming in a barn prior to taking off, and that definitely contributes to the overall experience. And then once the launch does kick in, you do feel a slight bit of forces as you initially start to make your way down the track. Launch 2 is taken while already moving, so it makes it feel even less forceful than the first, but it does however navigate a floater airtime hill while accelerating, so traveling up and down while being propelled forward is pretty fun and unique. Aside from the launches, Copperhead Strike checks so many other boxes. The 5 inversions deliver some world-class hang time, with the JoJo roll directly out of the station being one of the highlights, and then you also have phenomenal airtime all throughout. This coaster is also relatively small, with a top height of just 82 feet, but it fits a heck of a lot of thrills in a small package. And I have a full review of Copperhead Strike on my channel if you want to go ahead and check that out. And now from the weakest launch to the strongest, at number 5 we have Accelerator at Knott's Berry Farm. This coaster is all about its launch, with a hydraulic system taking riders from 0 to 82 miles per hour in 2.3 seconds, which is just an absurdly forceful launch, especially for a launch that takes you right out of the station. And I just cannot get over how quickly it takes you to that top speed of 82 miles per hour, especially since the launch track is just 157 feet in length. So Accelerator definitely provides one of the most impressive launches in the world, but as a wise man once said, with great power comes great downtime, or something like that. Now, coaster enthusiasts are well aware of this, but hydraulic launches can be some of the most finicky and problematic, and that has been the case for Accelerator, which has faced several multi-month long periods of downtime throughout the course of its over 21 years of life. Now, one of the downsides of Accelerator is that the ride as a whole could be a bit more lengthy, with just 25 seconds of prime ride time. But Accelerator does navigate over 2,000 feet of track in that time, which means it has an average speed of roughly 55 miles per hour. During that time, you navigate an airtime-filled 200-foot tall top hat and some forceful overbanked turns. So I don't feel like this coaster shortchanges you too badly. It's just short and sweet, but I definitely do think the coasters ahead of it are a bit more complete. Moving on from quality to quantity, at number 4 we have Hagrid's Magical Creatures Motorbike Adventure at Universal's Islands of Adventure. And this will contain spoilers, so please skip ahead if you would like to avoid them. This coaster has 7 launches. Yes, 7 launches. That is just insane. And sure, some of the launches are better than others, but having this many alone is just unheard of. These launches are nice and varied, with one of the launches being backwards, another launching you out of a dark tunnel, and the fastest of the launches bringing you up to 65 miles per hour. The rest of this coaster includes a spike that sends you backwards, a vertical drop track, onboard audio, pretty scenery, and of course incredible Harry Potter theming all throughout the 3-minute and nearly mile-long ride. There is obviously a lot to talk about with this coaster, and I definitely cannot cover it all in this video, but this is without a question a top tier overall ride experience. Staying in the same park, we have yet another Universal coaster, VelociCoaster. And this is one of the best coasters, period. Having 2 launches serves the ride very well, as VelociCoaster gets better and better as you go along. The fun little pre-show before the first launch builds anticipation by rocking you back and forth and bringing you face to face with real live raptors. The first launch itself is quite punchy, taking you from 0 to 50 miles per hour in just 2 seconds. At roughly the halfway mark, the second launch boosts you from 40 miles per hour to 70 in 2.4 seconds, which I actually enjoy more, even though it isn't technically as forceful as the first launch. But it certainly feels just as forceful, and the speed of this launch is faster, and the visuals of traveling through a tunnel quickly make it feel even faster than it is. VelociCoaster also has amazing ride elements aside from the launches, with a 155-foot tall top hat, an awesome fast and floaty wave turn, and of course that world-famous Mosasaurus roll, and that's just to name a few. On top of all of that, VelociCoaster has an amazing setting with breathtaking rockwork in the first half and water surrounding you in the second half. All in all, this is a phenomenal ride that just also happens to be a launch coaster. Coming in at the number 2 spot is Pantheon at Busch Gardens Williamsburg. While it's debatable whether or not this or VelociCoaster is the better overall ride, when it comes to launches, I definitely think Pantheon has the edge. Pantheon has a total of 4 launches, with each launch getting progressively stronger and faster, with the fastest launch being particularly forceful. The first launch is short but strong, but the next 3 launches are definitely where it's at. You essentially rock back and forth until you have enough momentum to make it through the rest of the layout, but this is really exciting, and here's why. These launches all take place with an airtime hill in the middle, so each launch provides varying strength of airtime, and one of the launches even gives backwards airtime. The launch track is also sandwiched in between a top hat and vertical spike, which both provide additional airtime between launches. After the final 73 mile per hour launch gets you over the top hat, you'll navigate a 95-degree drop, several whippy transitions, and an overall fast-paced and incredible coaster. Pantheon is definitely a fantastic coaster, and those launches play a large part in that. And real quick, before we get to my number 1 launch coaster, let's take a quick look at a few honorable mentions. Starting off with Top Thrill Dragster at Cedar Point. I didn't include this coaster because the version I've ridden is technically closed for good, and nobody knows for sure what is going to be made of it. Dragster operated for 18 years in its original form, and it had one of the best launches in the world with an acceleration of 0 to 120 miles per hour in just 4 seconds. I do, however, think the rest of the ride was a bit lacking, with just a top hat and twisting drop following the launch. So I'm excited to see what happens with this coaster, and I hope it's even better than it was before. Poltergeist at Six Flags Fiesta Texas is an LIM launch coaster just like Mr. Freeze, taking riders from 0 to 60 in less than 4 seconds. It is an incredibly compact ride that is filled with near misses, hefty positive G-forces, and some great disorienting inversions. It does just have a few slower spots throughout the ride, which prevent it from being in my top 10. Cheetah Hunt at Busch Gardens Tampa is a really cool coaster, but it is just a little too tame for my liking. I do, however, love what it does offer, with 3 launches that are moderately forceful, a great setting that actually navigates through real animal exhibits, and a nice long layout that is overall just plain fun. Manta at SeaWorld San Diego is very comparable to Copperhead Strike, with an amazing ride that includes underwhelming launches. The rest of the coaster's snappy turns and exciting airtime are great, but since it isn't as exciting or intense as Copperhead, I just couldn't find room for it on the list. And lastly, a coaster that I'm really sad not to include, the Flash V2 at Six Flags Discovery Kingdom. Launching while dangling under the track is so fun, the first launch is quite punchy, and you have a total of 4 launches. I also absolutely love the floating sensations that this coaster offers, but it is a bit redundant and not as fast-paced as the coasters that ended up making the list. And finally, at number 1, Maverick at Cedar Point. Maverick hits on every single note that I want from a coaster. It's fast-paced, aggressive, and has a long ride duration full of incredible moments. But first, let's talk about its launches. Now, the first one, I definitely think it is debatable if you even want to consider this a launch. It's almost like a fast-paced lift hill, but it does use an LSM system to get you up the hill. It's still pretty darn exciting, and it's certainly a great way to get you over that incredible 95-degree first drop. The second launch is taken from a near stop, and it's probably the most intense LSM launch I have felt. It's super forceful and exhilarating, taking you to your top speed of 70 miles per hour. Additionally, the launch is in a tunnel that is pretty dark in the daytime, but completely pitch black at night. This launch spits you out directly into a breakneck transition that goes from unbanked to banked faster than you can even blink. And when it is super dark in that tunnel, you cannot see this transition coming. Once you do make it out of the tunnel, you get a burst of light. So this whole sequence of events from the launch to right after the launch is just perfectly intense. The rest of the ride course is phenomenal as well, with the back-to-back inversions actually being the weakest part of the ride, which is just a testament to how intense this coaster really is. Maverick is filled with stomach-turning ejector airtime, the whippiest turns and transitions of any coaster out there, and a great setting as you fly over and around water and through rockwork. So I know it only has one fast launch, but the launch is just so strong, the rest of the ride is even stronger, and I mean, this coaster is just the epitome of an aggressive ride. And I think that aggression is amplified by the launches, which really makes this the perfect launch coaster in my mind. But that's it for this one. Go ahead and let me know what your favorite launch coasters are in the comments down below. Make sure to give the video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Subscribe and turn on notifications for more content like this. Thank you so much for watching until the end, and make sure to tune in next time where I'll be talking about the top 10 launch coasters.